The year was 2018, and in Peru, as in much of Latin America, life unfolded amid social challenges and the uncertain promise of progress. For many young people from rural areas, the capital, Lima, represented more than just a city. It was the gateway to a future where the sweat of working the land could be exchanged for a professional career. This was the hope driving Avi Agreda Marcina, a 22-year-old who had left behind the rolling fields of her hometown, Cajamarca, in the north of the country. Cajamarca is a region where agriculture and livestock dictate the pace of life, and for teenagers finishing high school, reality was harsh. University was an expensive luxury, often out of reach. Avi, born on October 8, 1995, in San Jose de Lourdes, was the second of 5 children of Ladislao Agreda and Paola Marcia. From a young age, she learned domestic and farm responsibilities, but her appetite for learning was notably greater. She was described as a calm and cheerful girl with a clear ambition to build a career and work to support her parents and siblings, easing the burden of life in the countryside. In 2012, at just 17, she made a decision that would forever change her path. She would move to Lima. It was a bold move, worthy of a storybook heroine heading to New York or Los Angeles in pursuit of a dream, but in her case, with very limited resources. Her parents, despite having little money, supported her. She settled in the Carrillos district of the bustling metropolis, renting a modest room. Before long, she found work as a cashier at a university cafe. The dream of progressing, of providing a home in the city for her parents and siblings, was finally taking shape for a young woman from a humble background. Leaving home and establishing herself in the capital represented a profound break from social expectations, step toward upward mobility that carried the weight of her family's hopes. That ambition, however, would soon put her on a collision course. Avi's life unfolded like that of any young immigrant striving for an education, long, exhausting shifts alternating between work and study. It was in 2015 at that same university cafe that she crossed paths with Carlos Javier Walpa Vacas. He worked alongside her as the head chef. Carlos felt an immediate attraction to her. At first, he seemed merely a thoughtful, calm colleague, but that calm masked a turbulent swirl of emotions within him. Months passed, and in October 2015, Carlos decided it was time to formalize what he perceived as a potential relationship. He confessed his feelings to Avi and asked her to be his girlfriend. Avi politely said no. She explained that she already had a boyfriend, a tactic to extricate herself from an unwanted situation. In truth, Avi had no desire for any kind of relationship with Carlos Walpa. For Carlos, however, this rejection was a devastating blow to his self-image. In his mind, he had built an idealized version of reality. They were of the same socioeconomic background, both abstained from alcohol and had few friends. To him, that should have been enough for Avi to say yes. This flawed idealization is a key aspect of Carlos's psychological profile. Experts would later describe Carlos Walpa as a narcissist, someone who exaggerated the significance of his relationships with other women. Simple acts of courtesy or kindness from Avi, ordinary gestures from a coworker, were interpreted by him as signs of flirting or romantic interest. When reality contradicted his fantasy, frustration set in. Carlos refused to accept the no. He was convinced that Avi was lying about having a partner. His persistence took the form of attempts to win her over with gifts. "I told her I liked her, I offered her shoes. And I had money," he would later confess, revealing how he saw these material gestures as guarantees of reciprocation. Believing that his attention entitled him to something more, he continued to act like a kind colleague, always offering to help. Avi, innocently, came to trust his helpful persona. There were times when they went out together, but only as a distraction, always with Avi clearly emphasizing that she was already in a relationship. In December 2015, the cafes transferred Avi and Carlos to different branches, creating a period of physical distance. However, the separation did nothing to quell Carlos's fixation. On the contrary, that initial rejection he had felt began to morph into an overwhelming obsession, a fixation that would tragically culminate in the most heinous of crimes. In March 2016, Carlos and Avi crossed paths again at work. What Avi did not realize was the depth of the obsession consuming her former colleague. He would later confess that he could think of nothing else but being with her. Still, he tried to maintain composure, acting cold and calm while continuing to offer her gifts that Avi consistently refused. Avi's behavior, as she tried to distance herself from the obvious harassment, was something Carlos simply could not process. He felt rejected, betrayed, and perhaps most painfully for his narcissistic ego humiliated. This cocktail of negative emotions quickly turned into a deep-seated hatred that robbed him of peace. Returning home from work, Carlos's frustration was so intense that he would argue with his own mother, confessing that he felt on the verge of exploding. His obsession reached a point where he began to rationalize his hatred through a dangerous misogynistic distortion. He started to see Avi as an opportunist, someone who supposedly acted the same way with other men. In his twisted mind, Avi's beauty was a tool she used to mock him and others, and she needed to be punished for rejecting him. He came to believe that he had to teach Avi a lesson in humility because she used her charms to deceive men. In 2017, Avi landed a new job at a call center, a common position for students needing flexibility, in Victoria, while Carlos worked at a packaging factory in the suburbs of Lima. Still, Carlos kept in contact and soon discovered that Avi was not in a relationship. He tried to court her again, but she firmly reiterated that she wanted to focus on her studies and blocked him on her social media. The block did nothing but ignite Carlos's fury even further. Unable to accept the loss of contact, he resorted to fake profiles to continue following and monitoring her online life. In one Instagram post, in an alarming display of possessiveness, he even declared that Avi was his property. Carlos's hostility quickly escalated from the virtual world to physical threats. In a WhatsApp message, he unleashed his misogyny. "You think you're superior because you're beautiful. You use your beauty to mock me. But one day you'll understand what rejection feels like." From that point on, Carlos's harassment became a constant, looming presence. Avi, focused on her grueling routine of studies and work, began to feel watched. Carlos even started going directly to the institute where she studied in an attempt to intimidate her. At times, he would go to Avi's workplace, watching her from a distance. In these acts of stalking, he even boarded the same buses as her, following her movements. To blend into Lima's dense and chaotic crowds, he wore a hooded sweatshirt that partially concealed his face. Lima's traffic, notorious for its heavy congestion, forms a daily stage where millions navigate the city using public transport, such as micros or colectivos, shared buses and vans. In this environment, personal vigilance often wanes, and the sense of safety is fragile. 2 weeks before the tragedy, Avi realized the stalking had become real and urgent. She confided in her sister that a man was following her. She noticed him quickening his pace to catch up and quickly boarded a bus. The man, however, did not give up. He got on another vehicle to continue tracking her. Frightened, Avi got off at a busy stop, managed to catch another ride, and finally lost him. That incident was a clear warning that Carlos Walpa's resentment had reached its peak. Born and raised in Carabelo on the outskirts of Lima, Carlos was a 36-year-old man from a modest background, his father a bricklayer, his mother a homemaker. Neighbors and acquaintances described him as quiet, unsociable, and surprisingly, a regular attendee of an evangelical church with no vices such as drinking or smoking. No one suspected he was capable of violence, and the crime shocked everyone, including his parents. Yet beneath the surface of his religious and seemingly peaceful life, obsession simmered. Forensic psychological evaluations conducted later noted that he showed no signs of schizophrenia, hallucinations, or cognitive impairment. Carlos was fully capable of distinguishing right from wrong and was entirely aware of his actions. He was not insane, but rather extremely misogynistic, according to the report. Seeing women as figures who treated him unfairly or failed to appreciate his attention, he had reached an emotional breaking point. It was too much tension, too much anger, too much rage, he would later confess. There comes a moment when you lose control and genuinely believe you're doing the right thing. He began to convince himself that he was trying to teach Avi a lesson, distortedly believing that she shouldn't take advantage of others. Carlos Walpa's plan had been developing over the course of a month, fueled by anger and frustration at being rejected. He had purchased gasoline in preparation for the attack. His fear of the ubiquitous surveillance cameras in Lima had held him back until then. But he eventually conceived the idea of carrying out the attack on a bus, where it would be harder to be identified. On Tuesday, April 24, 2018, Carlos put his plan into motion. He left work around 3 p.m., taking a complicated series of public transport routes, carefully calculated to throw anyone off his trail. He walked, boarded a bus, got off, took another until he reached La Rambla shopping center. From there, he walked to Nicolas de Parola Avenue, where Avi worked. As he walked, his mind was consumed by bitter thoughts about how he believed Avi was taking advantage of his attention and appearance. In his twisted narrative, he convinced himself that he needed to give her a harsh lesson. At 5:40 p.m., he spotted her. Greta was leaving work. Carlos began following her on foot to the bus stop, boarding the same bus that was headed toward Carrillos, the neighborhood where Avi lived. She got on line 8, a route connecting San Juan de Lurigancho to Carrillos. Carlos's disguise was flawless. He wore dark sunglasses and his hooded sweatshirt. Avi didn't recognize him. She took a seat in the third row while he settled at the back of the bus. The tension in the air, invisible to everyone else, began to mount. Around 7 p.m., the bus was passing through the district of Miraflores, a usually busy area with heavy traffic. Exhausted from her double shift of work and studies, Avi had dozed off, a common practice for anyone enduring Lima's endless traffic. She was vulnerable. The bus came to a stop. That was the signal Carlos had been waiting for. He stood up and moved toward the center of the vehicle where Avi was seated. From his backpack, he took out a container filled with flammable liquid. Carlos approached and poured it over her. His intent was to intimidate Avi and cause her harm. He would later state his intentions explicitly. The bus began moving again and the liquid spread. Avi woke up and reacted. From that moment on, the situation became chaotic and desperate. Carlos tried to ignite the fire with a lighter, failing in his first attempts. Determined, he turned to a box of matches. The incident left Avi with severe injuries. Flames erupted throughout the bus. The flammable container Carlos had been holding fell to the floor, spilling more liquid and intensifying the blaze. Amid the chaos, he also suffered burns on his left arm. As the situation escalated, Carlos uttered the phrase that would later become widely known: "See no heirs, Maya. No heirs, Donati. If you're not mine, you're no one's." The passengers, surrounded by smoke and intense heat, fell into shock and panic. The scene was chaotic. Some tried to stop Carlos, but he managed to escape. Others ran desperately to get off the bus. About 10 people, in addition to Avi, were injured as they tried to distance themselves from the flames. Greta attempted to leave the bus, inadvertently contributing to the spread of the fire. The driver tried to intervene, but without success. Carlos fled the scene, running across several blocks. He managed to hail a taxi and, due to the burns on his arm, asked the driver to take him to Mariano Molina Hospital. Meanwhile, outside the bus, chaos reigned. Shocked witnesses tried to provide aid. Someone used a common vehicle fire extinguisher on Avi, who was engulfed in flames. In a video, the young woman was seen confused and staggering, covered in the white powder from the extinguisher. Tragically, the chemical powder caused irritation and worsened her burns. Minutes later, firefighters arrived on the scene and Avi was rushed to Casimiro Ulloa Hospital. The diagnosis revealed severe burns over a large portion of her body with damage to internal organs and her respiratory tract. Due to the severity of her injuries, she was transferred to the intensive care unit (ICU) at Guillermo Almenara Hospital. To manage her pain and allow her body to recover, she had to be sedated. At Mariano Molina Hospital, Carlos called his sister, asking her to pick him up. But where he expected to find safety, the police were already closing in. Images of the burning bus and Greta's desperate struggle as a victim of the attack shocked the nation of Peru. The story of a young student, gravely injured by her stalker after rejecting his advances, became headline news worldwide. Investigators acted swiftly. Security camera footage from Miraflores captured the attacker's escape, a man in a hood and cap running through the streets. The police, unaware of the attacker's identity, began questioning Avi's family to gather clues. It was Avi's younger sister who provided the crucial information. Avi had been harassed by a man named Carlos Javier. She also recalled that Avi had used her borrowed phone to call Carlos, demanding that he stop his harassment. Armed with the phone number and an image of the suspect, investigators turned to the National Identification Registry (DNI), a document essential for verifying a Peruvian citizen's identity, similar to a US SSN or government ID. It didn't take long to trace the company where Carlos Walpa worked, a packaging factory. When police called the workplace, they learned that Carlos had been absent, claiming he had suffered an accident the previous night. The inconsistency of this statement immediately raised alarms. Police obtained Carlos's home address in Carabello and set up a surveillance operation. Growing impatient, around 10 a.m., an officer disguised himself as a social worker from Carlos's company, claiming he needed to check on his health. When Carlos left his house, the officer noticed burn marks on his left arm. The bus driver had reported that the attacker had burns on his left arm, leaving no room for doubt. 2 days after the attack, Carlos Walpa Vacas was apprehended at his residence. As in the patrol car, Carlos desperately tried to maintain an elaborate lie. When asked about the burn, he claimed he had been heating water to take a shower. He insisted that at that very moment a friend had called to inform him that Avi had suffered an accident and that he had burned himself by accident. "What happened?" "What happened, sir? How did you get burned?" they asked. His explanation failed to convince the investigators, and the police presented him as the prime suspect. At the station, Carlos Walpa continued to deny any involvement in the attack on Avi. The interrogation was long and tense. The investigative journalistic account highlights the suspect's emotional collapse. Carlos underwent multiple rounds of questioning, during which his nervousness was palpable. With each interrogation, his statements became increasingly contradictory. Finally, confronted with the evidence and under intense police pressure, Carlos Walpa confessed to his crime. The security cameras he had feared so much had captured his flight from the scene of the incident. In his confession, 36-year-old Carlos Javier Walpa reaffirmed the motivation that had consumed him. He stated that his sole intention was to attack Avi in a way that would affect her face. He repeatedly claimed that he was bothered by the attention she received and felt compelled to give her a lesson. His hatred constantly tormented him, and seeing photos of Avi on social media filled him with frustration as he watched her, living a normal life while he struggled with personal problems. "I didn't want to end her life, I just wanted to damage her appearance," he declared. He was convinced that he needed to strike at what he saw as the source of his ego, her physical appearance, because she had rejected him. Avi Agreta's struggle was evident in the halls of Hospital Guillermo Almenara. She was under intensive care, and the medical team faced the monumental challenge of treating severe burns across much of her body. She underwent multiple surgical procedures, of them documented within the first few weeks. The reconstructive surgeries were complex, totaling 12 procedures in the first 38 days. Doctors performed the removal of damaged tissue and applied skin grafts, including cultured grafts, always aiming to prevent infections and support recovery.